You've probably heard it 100 times, in classrooms, in motivational speeches, maybe even from a teacher who was trying to make you feel better about a bad grade. Even Einstein failed math. It's one of the most famous stories in history. A young boy, struggling in school, dismissed by his teachers, told he'd never amount to anything, and yet he grew up to change the entire universe with his mind. It's inspiring, it's comforting, it gives hope to every struggling student on the planet. There's just one problem. It never happened. Einstein did not fail math, he did not fail school, and his teachers never called him a hopeless case. In fact, the real story of Einstein's childhood is almost the complete opposite of what you've been told, and it's far more fascinating than the myth. So today, on Truth Behind History, we're going to expose one of the most beloved misconceptions in popular culture, trace where it came from, and reveal the truth about what young Einstein was actually like. Stay with me, because this story has a twist that will completely change how you think about genius. Let's start with the story most people know. Albert Einstein, born 1879 in Ulm, Germany, was, according to popular belief, a terrible student. He was slow to speak as a child. His teachers were frustrated with him. He supposedly sat at the back of the class, daydreaming, ignored by everyone around him. One famous version of the story even claims that a teacher told him directly, "You will never amount to anything." Then came the supposed failure. Einstein failed his mathematics exams. He couldn't get into university. He was rejected, humiliated, written off by the academic world. And yet, against all odds, this failure went on to develop the special theory of relativity at age 26, the general theory of relativity a decade later, and eventually won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. It's a perfect underdog story, the rejected genius, the system that couldn't see his brilliance. Motivational speakers love it. Self-help books repeat it endlessly. It gets shared on social media every single week. But here's the truth, and it changes everything. Albert Einstein was not a bad student, not even close. Let's go back to the actual historical record. Einstein grew up in Munich, Germany, where he attended the Luitpold Gymnasium, a rigorous and respected school. From a young age, he showed extraordinary ability in mathematics and physics. By age 12, he had taught himself algebra and Euclidean geometry entirely on his own over a single summer. He also began studying calculus at 13. His sister, Maya Einstein, later wrote in her memoir that her brother had a deep love of mathematics and a remarkable ability to concentrate, qualities that were obvious even in childhood. So where did the failed math myth come from? Here's where it gets interesting. In Switzerland, there is a school entrance exam for the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School, known today as ETH Zurich, one of the most prestigious universities in the world. In 1895, at age 15, 2 years younger than the normal admission age, Einstein took this entrance exam. He passed the mathematics and physics sections brilliantly. He failed the French language and botany sections. That's it. That's the entire failure. A 15-year-old boy, applying 2 years early to one of Europe's top universities, did not pass the language and general knowledge portions of the exam. Then he spent 1 more year at a school in Aarau, Switzerland, graduated with excellent marks, particularly in mathematics, and was admitted to ETH Zurich the following year, in 1896. He did not fail mathematics. He was not a poor student. He was, by every credible account, exceptional. Now, let's talk about the sources. Because this isn't just a matter of opinion. The historical record is clear. Source 1. Einstein's own school records. Einstein's actual report cards from his years in Switzerland survive to this day. In the Swiss grading system of the time, the highest grade was a 6. Einstein consistently received 6 out of 6 in mathematics and physics throughout his schooling in Aarau. These records are held in Swiss archives and have been studied extensively by historians. Source 2. Walter Isaacson's biography. In 2007, Pulitzer Prize-winning author Walter Isaacson published Einstein, His Life and Universe, widely considered the most comprehensive biography of Einstein ever written. Isaacson examined Einstein's school records, letters, and personal journals in detail. His conclusion? Einstein was a strong and capable student, particularly in mathematics and physics. The failed student narrative, Isaacson writes, is simply not supported by the historical evidence. Source 3. The Swiss grading system confusion. Part of why this myth spread is a genuine misunderstanding about grading systems. When Einstein was young, Switzerland used a grading scale where 1 was the highest grade and 6 was the lowest, the exact opposite of what we might assume today. Some early biographers, reading old records without understanding this difference, saw Einstein's grade of 1 and assumed it was a failure. It was actually a top mark. This confusion was then repeated, amplified, and eventually became the popular myth we know today. Source 4. Einstein's own words. Einstein himself, later in life, was asked about his early academic performance. In his autobiographical notes, he described his years in Aarau as happy and intellectually stimulating. He spoke warmly of teachers who encouraged independent thinking. He never described himself as a poor student or a late developer. Now here's the part of this story that almost nobody talks about, and it's the part that matters most. Einstein did have a genuine problem with authority, not because he was slow or struggling, but because he was bored. He found rote memorization and rigid teaching methods deeply frustrating. He didn't like being told what to think. He preferred figuring out how to think. In the Munich gymnasium, he clashed with teachers who demanded mechanical obedience to rules. One teacher, a man named Joseph Degenhardt, reportedly told the young Einstein that his very presence in the classroom destroyed the respect of the students. So in a sense, Einstein did have a difficult school experience, but it wasn't because he couldn't understand the material. It was because he understood it too well, and he had little patience for the way it was being taught. He eventually left the Munich gymnasium early, not because he was failing, but because he was unhappy. His doctor provided a note saying he was suffering from nervous exhaustion. Einstein later admitted he had engineered the situation to get out of a school he hated. Here's the real twist. The school rejected Einstein before he could reject it. His class teacher declared that his continued presence in the school was disruptive. Einstein, a supremely confident, intellectually restless teenager, was essentially asked to leave. So the myth got the story backwards. Einstein didn't fail his school. In many ways, his school failed him, not because it overlooked a struggling student, but because it had no room for a mind that operated on a different level entirely. And here's the deeper irony. The very quality that made Einstein difficult for teachers to handle, his refusal to accept facts without questioning them, his insistence on understanding why things worked the way they did, was the exact quality that made him the greatest scientific mind of the 20th century. He didn't succeed despite his rebellious streak. He succeeded because of it. So let's bring it all together. Albert Einstein did not fail mathematics. His school records prove he was exceptional in math and physics from a young age. The myth likely began from a misreading of the Swiss grading system, was amplified by early careless biographers, and was then repeated so many times that it became accepted as fact. The real story is more nuanced and more inspiring than the myth. Einstein struggled not because he lacked ability, but because he was too curious, too questioning, and too independent for a rigid educational system that valued obedience over original thought. He was a difficult student not because he was slow, but because conventional schooling couldn't contain him. And that is the actual lesson worth taking from Einstein's life. The question isn't whether you're passing your exams. The question is whether you're asking the right questions. Because Einstein didn't change the world by memorizing the right answers. He changed the world by refusing to stop asking why. If this video made you look at Einstein or your own education a little differently, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who want the real story behind history, not just the comfortable version. And if you want to keep uncovering the truths that history textbooks often get wrong, subscribe to Truth Behind History. We've got a lot more myths to dismantle together.